All right. Hello. Thank you so much for your presence today and for your interest and participation in Boise's creative community. Thank you to our sign language interpreters. I'm grateful for your presence today. My name is Dr. Matilda Bubb, and you can call me Tilly. I'm Boise's cultural planner with the Department of Arts and History. We're going to be recording today's session so that it can be available in the future for yourself or others. If you're interested in the recording presentation, the PowerPoint, or some reports that I've prepared that go into greater depth of the data, please feel free to reach out to me, and those are available to you at any time. We're going to save questions until the end. It's a lot of data, but again, remember, you can request the presentations or see the presentation again. Before we begin, we have a message from our mayor, Mayor McLean.
I wanted to thank you for participating in the cultural survey and listening sessions. I am so happy that you've joined us today to hear a presentation of what we learned from you and from everybody else that participated. Your valuable impact will guide how we support Boise's cultural and creative industries today and well into the future. I've heard from many of you and know that this is a challenging time to make a living as a full-time artist or to run a cultural organization. And one of my strategic priorities is to create opportunity for everyone and an economy that uplifts everybody, including those of you in arts and culture. Through this cultural planning process and the resulting document, I remain committed to supporting arts and culture as a central part of Boise's community and economy. Thank you again for being here and for sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mayor McLean. Really grateful for your support. Today, I am reporting out on the findings of the Community Cultural Survey and the listening sessions that we've done in the past year with the City of Boise employees, members of the public, individual artists, and leaders of cultural organizations. I want to thank you to all of those who participated and shared their thoughts with us through this process. Your input is vital to identifying challenges and opportunities so that we can work together to do what we can to make Boise's creative community the best that it can be for all of us. The purpose of the survey and the listening sessions was really to assess Boise's cultural landscape from multiple perspectives, from your perspectives, in preparation of a citywide cultural plan update. The findings that I'm sharing with you today will inform the writing of that cultural plan, which has not happened yet. So we're just sharing the findings, not necessarily the solutions or the path forward yet. We will identify strategies for the City of Boise and community partners to invest in. So this plan isn't just for us, but it's also for you to do your planning as well. And then it's to strengthen Boise's creative ecosystem for artists, for the public, and for cultural organizations. I'm going to provide you an agenda of the structure of my presentation today so you have an idea of where we're going. First, I'll provide a broad overview that will give you a framework for how I've organize things, including some big picture insights. I'll discuss 9 dominant financial challenges that people have shared with us. I'll address some workforce challenges and needs. I'll talk about volunteer opportunities. We'll look briefly at space challenges, including the need for more venues. I'll talk about physical and financial accessibility of the arts from the artists and the audience member perspectives. I will then address social accessibility will be addressed. I'll reflect on the interlocking issues of marketing, promotion, and audience reach. And then lastly, I'll comment on the importance of partnerships and networking to artists and arts organizations. I'll close with an overview of our next steps and direct you to some additional resources, as well as have time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, please note them as we're going through. All right, now we'll get into participant feedback insights. First, a big picture overview of the process. We conducted one survey with different portions of the survey that were open to public, artists, and organizational leaders. The survey ran from November 4th to the 25th in 2024. The public and artist survey had 1,084 responses, which we were blown away by. 614 of those identified as artists who answered some additional questions, and then 470 members identified as members of the public. From the organizations, we had 127 cultural leaders in nonprofits and creative industries such as architecture, design, music, and film. All responded to the organizational survey. When we asked survey respondents to reflect on today's arts and cultural scene, overall, those words are present here that the participants identified. They're really illustrative of what is working. People had comments like fun, friendly, vibrant, growing, diverse, and welcoming. And they also identified what is challenging, underfunded, insular, hidden, lacking, or expensive. When we asked them to look at the future and what they wanted to see, um, they envisioned a future where there was more hope uh, for accessibility, diversity, abundance, and support. So these just give us kind of a temperature of where people are. We did we talked to 77 participants in our listening sessions. This was a follow-up to the survey to go more into depth in in-person conversations. These conversations took place in May of 2025, again with 70 participants. We did 3 public sessions, which included one that was focused on City of Boise employees, 2 artist sessions, 4 cultural organization sessions, which we broke up between small and large organizations, and we had 3 additional one-on-one interviews with some leaders who weren't able to attend the larger group presentations. When we asked public members to describe the Boise art scene, they highlighted that the scene has a variety, it's diverse, accessible, underrated, scrappy, and resourcefulness are the representative qualities that they carried forward. When we asked artists and performers to identify words that they identified with the scene, they identified underfunded, struggling, insular, homogenous, but they also talked about the community being overachieving, growing, bright, and eager. When we talked to cultural organizational leaders about the art scene, they reflected that the scene is very grassroots, it's growing, it's inspiring, works on a shoestring, is funky, joyful, collaborative, worried, siloed, and full of potential. This gives us a sense of where people are coming from. I wanted to first share some big picture perspective insights that we took away that really we heard reflected in all 3 different groups. The number one is that COVID-19 has long-standing impacts. It really changed audience behaviors. Our participant numbers for organizations have not returned to pre-COVID closure numbers. And public members noted their preference for smaller events and less crowds. For artists and arts organizations, we saw that they're highly entrepreneurial. They're earning income from a variety of sources and events, really trying to make ends meet by doing a multiplicity of things. The sudden shift in national and state arts funding that's happened recently has really alarmed many and has increased competition for grants and for donations and additional resources. That's something that is true for both artists and arts organizations. And lastly, Boise's cultural scene is really maturing. There's a solid base of organizations that are over 15 years old, but there's also a burgeoning group of emerging artists organizations that are under 5 years old. This is a graph from the survey from organizations that shows that demographic with over 41% of the respondents as over 20 years old, and then 21% under 5 years old. And then there's a solid grouping in between that are weathering the storms that are facing organizations. I want to start with financial challenges because this is definitely the dominant area that we heard from in both the survey and from the listening session participants. The financial challenges in the creative community are real. The arts are under-resourced. They need more access to financial support. Artists and organizations are facing financial insecurity due to the changing audience patterns that I mentioned earlier, the patchwork funding, grant barriers, and limited philanthropic and donor engagement. Operational support, which would be rent or salaries, is the most difficult for organizations to find. And then the arts are competing with social services for philanthropy dollars. And as we know, there's a lot of need in the community. Low visibility and a lack of public understanding about the economic and social value of the arts hinders giving from individuals and organizations. Artists and organizations are really needing assistance in cultivating a community culture of philanthropy for the arts across the Treasure Valley. Many artists hold multiple jobs, and they struggle to sustain their practice due to limited support or funding. Artists are also perceiving that civic leaders and the public underestimate the value and labor behind their creative work. Artists sometimes report that sometimes they receive more recognition and compensation in larger metro areas outside of Idaho, which makes them consider moving to where there are better opportunities or lower cost of living. When we looked at the organizational's annual budgets, what we found mirrored what we saw in the age of the organizations. Um, there's a spike of those who have budgets under $25,000, 27%, and those with over 500,000. So again, that could be reflective of their age. What we don't see here are indicators of those that have gone out of business. We don't know if those were larger or smaller. A peek into their revenue streams, we see that the top revenue streams for organizations are grant revenues, individual donations, ticket sales or admission fees, and corporate or business sponsors. When we look at individual artists' creative practices and try to understand what's financing their practices, the top revenue generator for them is from their artwork or performance or creative service. But we also see that additional occupations that are not related to their creative practice is what's funding their practices, and that additional occupations that are related to their creative practice. So maybe they're a musician and they work at a music shop. That's the third largest thing that contributes to people's creative practices. We also see family support and grants for creative practice that help artists do what they're passionate about. I'm going to move into addressing workforce challenges. The first point I'd like to make is that what we found is that Boise lacks structured pathways for creatives from an education to employment in really specialized technical and creative jobs that are available locally, but they often get filled regionally or nationally because of that lack of structured pathways. We also saw that many of these creative jobs are part-time, which makes it difficult to fill the roles with qualified local candidates who are piecing things together from multiple places. So when people get trained locally, they often go elsewhere to look for permanent full-time work. We also see that many local artists work multiple part-time jobs. This gives them flexibility in their creative practices, but it doesn't necessarily provide the stability of healthcare or other benefits that individuals seek. Some needs that were addressed in workforce issues. Artists really talked about wanting to have more business and entrepreneurial training in marketing, taxes, contracts, pricing, or the use of AI. Workshops and those things would help. Emerging artists in all disciplines seek mentorship to bridge that gap between education to professional practice to create that structured pathway. Education and training that's tailored to Boise-specific opportunities and its creative economy are needed. Artists also talked about wanting regular structured opportunities to network, to collaborate, to learn from their peers. And then lastly, access to healthcare for artists working part-time is needed because of that lack of ability to access it from a full-time position. When we looked at the percentage of income from the creative practice, what we found was that, as you can see from this graph, over 60% of the artists surveyed are making less than 20% of their income from their artistic practices. The average income of artists is $29,840 with a median income of $20,000. The highest reported income was $99,000, although that may not be from their creative practice. When we talk to artists about their employment, 38% of the artists reported that they are self-employed. 21% do not have an arts-related job. 10% have a full-time job with a creative organization. So this helps us to understand how artists are piecing their life together professionally. When we talk to cultural organizations and we ask them how many full-time employees they have, 53% have 1 to 5 employees, while 11% have over 20 employees. I'm sorry, 27% have no employees, and then 11% have over 20. So this, again, may be reflective of emerging and established organizations, and those with no employees might be representative of those who are just beginning. When we looked at how many part-time employees they have, 46% have 1 to 5 part-time employees. Over 10% have 20 employees. So this gives us a sense of employment opportunities in the creative workforce. I'm now going to discuss the volunteer roles in the cultural organizations. What we heard from organizations is that volunteers are really vital to the cultural sector, and they're used in really targeted ways. For instance, the Idaho Shakespeare Festival uses ushers. Art in the Park uses volunteers for their support of the Boise Art Museum at that event. We also heard that unpaid student interns raises some ethical concerns. There's a desire to have interns, but it's difficult for organizations to come up with the funding to pay the interns. So it's a bit of a conundrum due to the difficulty of paying them, but not wanting to have interns that are not being paid. Many organizations reported that they lack systems for defining volunteer jobs that are mutually beneficial. And this is part of what prompts them to not have organizational volunteers. Cultural organizations are looking for volunteers to build organizational capacity and community support, but they also have liability, supervision, and training challenges with volunteers. Community members want to volunteer to get access to events financially. They're also looking for belonging, and they want to support those creative organizations. There's also a desire to facilitate mentorship and skill building for emerging talent through volunteers, but the staff capacity to do so is limited. When we asked about the annual volunteer count of arts organizations, 37% of the organizations don't use volunteers at all. This could also be representative of some that we surveyed were creative industries, which are more businesses that don't work with volunteers. 20% use 1 to 5, 13% use 21 to 50, and 8% use over 100. Space challenges is something that we heard a lot about with the increase in property values and rent in the Treasure Valley since the pandemic. Finding and keeping affordable, accessible, and appropriate space is the foremost concern of organizations that don't own their own buildings. That rising rent is pushing artists out of creative practice in Boise, and it can be prohibitive for rehearsals, performances, and exhibitions. Limited venues make it hard for them to showcase their work and build their audiences. Those that do own their buildings or are in city-owned buildings are concerned with needed capital upgrades and renovations. There's no centralized, consistent, and inclusive and affordable space for collaboration, performance, and networking for artists. It is important to note that there are cultural organizations with their own or housed in city-owned buildings that have venues that fill important community needs. But each of these spaces has its own mission upon which to focus and can't meet all the community needs and gaps. But I do want to thank all the organizations that you see listed on this slide for their role in supporting Boise's creative communities. When we asked the public and artists, where do they go for creative activity? We found that 93% report that they go to downtown Boise venues. 58% go to Garden City venues, so we see how that's growing in its creative activity. 45% go to venues in neighborhoods outside of the Boise's downtown. We also found that artists have a greater likelihood of engaging in arts and culture in other locations when they travel, which we found interesting, but not surprising. When we asked the public where do they prefer to engage with arts and culture, 87% look to parks, libraries, community centers, and other public spaces. 85% are going to museums and cultural centers. 84% seek out music, film, or other performance venues. 65% are going to schools, colleges, and universities. And 61% experience culture in coffee shops and restaurants. When we ask what type of activities the public is attending, 88% go to see visual arts. We also had a high number of visual arts artists respond to the survey. 73% are attending cultural, heritage, or educational events or festivals. 71% are attending performing arts such as theater, dance, or musical theater. 64% are attending pop, rock, country performances. I want to note that you could put down multiple things as well. 64% are attending film, 63% attend symphonies, jazz, or opera, and 54% are attending literary events. In discussing physical and financial accessibility of cultural events, people reported that many venues lack ADA compliance. This excludes artists and audiences with disabilities from full participation. People also discussed high ticket prices that limit access for families, retirees, teachers, and younger audiences, while free or low-cost events in public venues like the parks or libraries and other neighborhood-oriented places are highly valued by everyone. The public would like to see some kind of same-day discounts, volunteer for entry opportunities, or subsidized tickets for seniors or youth. And then while highly accessed, as we saw in the earlier slide, downtown has some transportation and parking drawbacks, particularly for seniors and their families. In discussing social accessibility, we found that equity gaps are persisting in access to careers and creative opportunities for disabled and marginalized community members. Seniors and people with disabilities and parents with young children have compounded obstacles to participation. We heard from organizations that they strive to build more inclusive, family-friendly, and accessible cultural experiences to promote a sense of belonging. We also heard from attendees that they're seeking environments where they see familiar faces, feel represented, and can build community. Respondents seek smaller venues, events with live music, local art such as neighborhood-based events, things that are frequent, local, and low stakes. When looking at social accessibility, we asked about who are people attending events with. 73% go with their friends, 61% attend cultural events with their spouse, 54% go alone, which I was happy to see because I go to a lot of things alone, and then 30% attend things with their family. I promise I'm nearing the end. Marketing, promotion, and audience reach was of great concern to everyone. The absence of a centralized arts and events listing combined with weak social media returns and shrinking traditional press options has undermined marketing efforts of organizations. It's also made it difficult for the public to find what's going on. These social media platform fluctuations that are in use, their efficacy makes them an unreliable communication tool. There's also more people getting off social media. We found that word of mouth is really effective, but it's resource intensive to reach out to people, and it's not completely reliable. We also heard from people that new residents are really difficult to reach due to fractured marketing and promotional methods. In the end, artists and arts organizations talked about promotion and marketing being overwhelming and that they lack the resources to do so effectively. When we asked organizations what are the tools that they're using, the top tools they're using, the number one was word of mouth, 88%, social media at 86%, organizational websites or direct newsletters, 83%, email marketing or newsletters direct to people are 64%, and then community calendars at 42%. And there are other various methods. But again, it's difficult to connect to new people or people who haven't engaged before because of that lack of a direct email. And then it's hard for residents to know where to look for information or how to engage. When we asked people from the public or artists how they found out about arts or organizational events, 65% said that they look to that artist organizational website or newsletters for information. 62% said word of mouth. 49% said they're looking for local events calendars. 30%, 7% look to the City of Boise's website or event calendars, and 30% are going to the Department of Arts and History's newsletter or social media accounts. Flyers and local media account for under 30% of where the audience looks, and this is a significant change from what it was even 5 years ago. Partnerships and networking are very important to local creatives. In talking in the listening sessions in depth, leaders from arts organizations said that partnerships and networking are very desired, but they're hindered by time constraints, limited organizational capacity, scheduling issues, financial risks from both organizations, and coordination issues. Big and small organizations have different cost benefit scenarios in partnerships. So it's difficult to figure out how to make a partnership work equally. We also heard in the listening sessions, while there are some director-to-director conversations, there's a deep desire for more opportunities at staff at all levels to engage and learn from each other. We also heard that in the artist community. Artists and cultural organizations are really spread out throughout the valley. We want to look to how Boise can partner with nearby cities to create those, to support those creative communities, because artists' work does not stop at the border of a town. We also heard that leaders and artists and the public expressed great gratitude for the opportunity to network through these sessions, hear from each other, and provide feedback. And we were also very grateful for that. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about our next steps. As I noted, this presentation and the reports of the survey and listening sessions are available to you. I can provide the PowerPoint, and then I've got some reports that will be available on Wednesday that I can email to you as well that go into greater depth than I've spoken about today. I invite you to really think about how this feedback informs your work, your creative practice, or your participation in the community as an audience member. Staff will be working to identify strategies to try to meet the challenges that we've heard about from you, and we'll be drafting our cultural plan to reflect on these findings and city priorities. If you have something that you'd like to share with me regarding that process, please feel free to reach out and email me or invite me to coffee. So you can contact me with any additional input at my email, mbub@cityofboise.org. And I'm going to go off sharing now so that we can move on to questions and comments that you might have. Thank you so much for being present today with this presentation. Can you put your questions in the Q&A? And our staff member will facilitate the reception of those questions. And again, if you have questions individually for me, you're welcome to email me afterwards. And I'll put my email in the chat. And thank you again to Lavana for signing today. I'm very grateful. No questions? Jennifer, do you have any questions?
We do have a couple of questions. Thank you. Let's see. In general, what is the city of Boise? I think someone left their question maybe incomplete.
Sure, I can respond to the city of Boise's Department of Arts and History, which is what I'm a part of. We are a department of the city of Boise, and we have 5 different divisions. We have a public art division that manages public art for the city of Boise, cultural sites that runs the James Castle House and the Irma Heyman House, which are historical and community cultural facilities open to the public. We have a history division, a city public archive, communications, which manages grants and public education, walking tours. And then I'm a cultural planner for the city of Boise in the administrative division. So our focus is to support the local creative community as well as provide opportunities for the public to experience free and accessible arts and culture in their daily lives. And hopefully that answered your question. If not, give me a follow-up on that. I see a question from Fonda about that artists and the public perceive things differently. Is there a beginning idea of why? I think that yes, I think artists are creative workers. They're in the workforce, both individually self-employed, but also working for cultural organizations. So they're perceiving the environment from their personal perspectives based on opportunities, as well as their ability to pursue their creative practice. What I heard in the public sessions is more about people going to and attending events. So they're really they're seeing the creative community from the perspective of the cultural community. But it's a little bit more of an outside looking in based on what experiences are available to them. So are there accessible events that they can go to? So they're looking more at the audience perspective rather than the participant or the entrepreneurial perspective. And again, if that doesn't answer your question, please ask a follow-up. And then lastly, I see a clarification. What is the City of Boise's priority? The City of Boise has a lot of priorities. So we are one department of many departments at the city. So it's difficult for me to speak directly to. I know that the mayor has, as you heard in the earlier presentation from her, that she's looking to make Boise a place where everyone can participate, both as audience members um, um, as well as participants. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. We will remain for about 5 more minutes to answer some additional questions. My colleague has just given me a link to the mayor's strategic priorities of a city for everyone, and I've put that in the chat for you. Can the public access that? I'm not sure the public can access the chat.
I'll make sure they can. Sorry about that.
Okay. The question is, in addition to the survey results, what will the city like to look for information as we move forward in the strategy development? For example, what other cities are doing really well, etc. Thank you for that question. We will be doing some follow-up conversations with people regarding priorities. What we're sharing out with you in this presentation today and in the reports that I have prepared is really our findings from you. What I'm doing now is really, as you suggest, looking at other cities. What have they done well? I'm reviewing other cultural plans. I'm reviewing other programs. We're looking at possible ways to address the challenges that are facing people. And then we're going back to our leadership, both our internal leadership of our staff and our leadership at the City of Boise, to identify what resources are available and then what are the priorities. How do those fit together with competing priorities? So the cultural plan is really a 5 to 10-year document. So we know that we're not going to be able to solve everything all at once, but it's a document that will helpfully give us a shared conversation around what's working and what's not working, and a shared resolve around what we want to address. But this is why we're making this information public now, rather than waiting until the cultural plan comes out, because we want to invite conversation and dialogue about these issues prior to writing the plan. So we are sincere in wanting to make this information something that is helpful to you, as well as something that deepens our ability to respond in a meaningful way to the challenges that the creative community are facing, and ways to celebrate what's going really well. I'm open to any additional questions. I really thank you for being here today. This is something I'm very passionate about, and that our department is very passionate about, and the opportunity to speak with so many of you during the process has really been meaningful to me. Thank you, Dwayne, for your comment on the work. Last question, will this presentation be available later? Yes. So we've recorded today's presentation, so you can watch the recorded presentation. I'll also make the PowerPoint available to you if you just wanted to read through the PowerPoint or share this with your staff. Thank you so much for your support and your interest in what we're doing today. I think with that, we'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you so much for showing up today, and thank you for your interest. And please feel free to follow up with me in the future.